welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today we have Richard Green hanging out with us, beaming in from the UK in London, I believe. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So, you're a freelance D&D writer. You also have your own stuff over on Drive Through RPG, I believe, and
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and some
yeah,
other plations as well. As
yeah.
usual, folks, the pin post you can find links to find Richard around the web. So, who are you currently writing for?
Well, I'm currently writing for Kobold Press, and I have been writing for them on and off really for about 10 years. So I started as part of the open design project that Wolfgang started. I don't know how many of your viewers remember that, but that was a sort of you were able to kind of see how venture creation worked from the beginning. You kind of subscribed, and you got to sort of post lots of questions and kind of write little bits here and there and kind of answer lots of polls on what would happen. And at the end of it, you got an adventure which wouldn't be available anywhere else. And the first one of those projects I went on was Empire of the Ghouls for D&D 3.5, which was, I think, in 2008, 2009, something like that. And out of that project, 12 years later, whatever, I ended up as the lead writer on the new Empire of the Ghouls for 5th edition, which is a brand new adventure path, but it includes some of the locations and some of the characters from the original adventure, which I was involved in a long time ago. So that was great.
So, in some ways, you've come full circle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I
So,
started off just contributing, and then a little bits here and there, and I ended up writing the outline and 2 chapters of the adventure path.
so for us, like the holy trinity of third-party publishing is Kobold Press and Nord Games and Fraga Games. They seem to put out like the most consistent and some really great stuff. Not in any particular order, but we definitely used a bunch of stuff from those third party publishers in our own games, and we really enjoy those. So what has it been like working for one of the larger third party publishers? I mean, because the only place to really go from there is Paizo and Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it's great because the size of the company is not. It's like Wolfgang really sort of is very hands on with everything, and then he has a brilliant editor, Megan Maracle, who worked on Empire of the Ghouls and has worked on other stuff before. Sends me very, very detailed feedback. Always explains why she wants to change something and why it would be better if she changed it. And Mark Radel, who is the art director, who is responsible for commissioning all the amazing artwork. So kind of working with those people, just in that small team, is excellent, really. And then also, we got to know I got to know a lot of the freelancers, over the years. The only time I've met any of them in person was at Gen Con 2014 when we were actually over.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't been able to sort of meet any of the other freelancers since, but I have been to see Wolfgang in Seattle as well. But yeah, it's just a nice feel, and I think there's a Facebook group, Kobold Press and Midgard Facebook group, and nearly all of the designers are on there, and they're more than happy to answer very complicated, minute lore questions and things like that. We're all kind of nerdy about it. We're all sort of fans of Kobold Press because a lot of us started in the open design patron projects as fans, really, and then we ended up writing for them. So yeah, that's why we kind of stuck with them for such a long time. But yeah, I'd love to write for Wizards or Paizo at some point. I have an adventure coming out for Eberron, which is part of the Adventurers League Oracle of War adventure path, and that comes out. That's coming out later this year, but it has to preview at Virtual Gen Con first before it gets published on DM Skills.
So you're working your way in there. You're getting closer.
Yes, yes.
Did anything in particular like draw you to Eberron to write that, or just an opportunity came up, or were you already a fan of that world?
That was Eberron was because I go to UK Games Expo every year, which is the biggest UK games convention, and I think it's now the third biggest in the world after Gen Con and Essen Spiel. And at UK Games Expo, there's quite a lot of Adventures League stuff that runs every year. And one of the people that's involved in the writing the adventures and the epics and stuff that run at UK Games Expo is Will Doyle. And Will is someone I met a few years ago at Dragon Meet, which is our other main convention here. Will ended up in a game I was running for my city setting, Parsantium, City at the Crossroads, which I was playtesting at Dragon Meet. So Will was in my group, and I met him there. And then I played in a couple of his adventures at UK Games Expo. And then I started getting interested in what they were doing with the Adventures League. And last year, he asked me to write an adventure, a CCC adventure for the convention, which I did. And then after that, myself and one of the other writers who worked on those got asked to write for this Oracle of War adventure pass. So I bought all the Eberron stuff back in when it came out for 3.5. I had a huge collection of Eberron books, but I've never actually played a game in Eberron. So I was kind of back revising it all, rereading it all to write the adventure. But it was great fun. It's a fantastic setting.
Hey, had you submitted a campaign setting to Wizards of the Coast back in the day?
No. Well, as part of the campaign, no, I didn't. No.
I'm just curious. Oh yeah, we submitted like 2 of them. We to this day we curse Keith Baker affectionately. Yes. You beat us, Keith Baker.
You can see why that one was picked though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We always say that as well. It was so good. Yeah, we had submitted one that was more like traditional fantasy, generic, and in hindsight, that was pretty boring in my opinion. And then the other one I had submitted was a little bit more. It was a lot different. There were the concept was the world had been shattered. It was called Shattered Realm, and the world had kind of mostly exploded, and so there was just these like floating land masses. And,
right.
Instead of having like traditional oceans or seas, they had what I was just calling other seas. And there was a certain kind of wood they could treat and turn into ships that they could sail across it. I did a thing with there was a land ruled by sorcerers, and they were sorcerer kings, and you had Fae Lords, where silence was prominent. But every place, arcane magic that was learned was outlawed because you were considered a brook with demons and devils.
Right, yeah.
It was a lot different than a lot of the other settings that are out there. But by and far, Eberron was way better. So, so were you playing in organized play before? Do you play?
No. So the first ever organized play game. I mean, apart from going to things like Dragon Meet here is like a 1-day convention. So what I tend to do when we tend to go to that is it like morning and afternoon. There's like a slot for each, and quite often I'll end up playing games other than D&D, and I haven't really been involved in organized play. And then when we went to Gen Con 2014, the main reason we wanted to go that year was because it was the anniversary of D&D, and 5th edition was coming out, and so we were really excited. So we signed up for lots of Adventures League adventures there and played in those, and that kind of got me into organised play. But the opportunity here to play at conventions is at conventions is less than in the US. So you can, but there are outside of London, there are definitely game shops that have regular organised play sessions, but in London there's not as much. So we tend to play just once a year at UK Games Expo, and we bring the characters back every year. I still have the same character from 2014. It's going up levels very slowly, but yeah, I do really like those. It's particularly the epics. And we had a D&D Open that were tied into Avernus last year, which was terrific fun. Which was the 8-hour scenario where you were half the party were paladins and half the party were warlocks, and you were chained together. It was excellent.
I'm kind of surprised that in London there isn't game shops where you can go play. I would think, in a major metropolitan city there would be more opportunities, not less.
there's a game, the game shop I've been going to for years and years is in central London. It's called the Orc's Nest, and they used to advertise in Dragon back in the day. And I think they actually got some of their adverts banned from Dragon because they had things like "filth, scum, chaos" as their like taglines, and Dragon didn't like it. But it's right in the middle of central London, and it's a very, very small shop. There's no way they can fit any gaming in there. And then the other really big, the other really well-stocked game shop is Leisure Games in North Finchley, and that does have some tables. But for me to get there, that's like about an hour and a half on the underground and trains and stuff. So, yeah, we've got a new game shop that we go to now, and we opened in January, and then ended up closing. And opened in January last year, and then ended up having to close temporarily for the pandemic this year. But that's called Bad Moon Cafe, and that's in the London Bridge area, and that's mostly Warhammer. But they let us role players in there as well, and they sell a bit of role playing stuff. But we've got those really big tables, and we can borrow all their cool terrain, so it's very good for playing D&D.
It's very nice of them to let you guys in.
You
play tabletop.
They sell beer there as well, so that's good.
Yeah. I agree, though. I'd be like looking at the schedules for the tube and stuff, and be like, hour and a half away. Yep, absolutely no place to play in here.
Yeah.
And plus, an hour and a half travel on public transportation is much different than just traveling as well.
Yeah.
So Dave wants to know, can you talk about the process of writing for Adventures League? Did you say you also wrote a CCC?
Yeah, I did. I wrote a CCC last year called The Tainted Grove, which is one of the UK adventures. Sorry, it's their thought. So we have a little area that was given to the UK Games Expo convention, which is on the Moonsea, and it was the Elven Float estuary through the Elven Woods, and there are 4 UK adventures that are set there, and the first 2 were CCCs that debuted at the UK Games Expo in 2018, and then the other 2 were one I wrote and one my colleague Ian wrote last year, and they have amazing retro covers. If you remember the original UK modules, or indeed any of the first edition modules with like the orange bar across the top, and then the color image, half-page image in the middle of the cover, and that sort of colored text underneath. They look like those. I find it quite interesting writing because that was I think a season 8 adventure, and there were various sort of things you had to do to kind of fit in with the template, including this sort of playing the pillars section, and you had to sort of put your role-playing notes at the back, and you couldn't give away any treasure. That was or you could give away treasure, but the characters weren't going to be able to keep the treasure at the end of the thing. So it took me a while to kind of get used to the template and everything, but it worked out fine. And when I play tested it and then also ran it at the convention, it worked really well. And people seem to like it. So, but I think every time there's a new season, there's a slightly different change in the template. And the Eberron Adventures for Oracle of War have a different template again, but I think the template for that is really strong. And there's a really clever way in which, if you play the adventures in sequence, you have a sort of special log sheet at the end of each one, and you can, things that happened when you played the last adventure kind of impact the future adventures. So at the beginning, the DM will say, "Has anyone got this legacy event from an earlier adventure?" And then that will affect what happens at the table at the convention, which I think is very clever.
So Dave also has another question. How was Wizards of the Coast at Games Expo? I've seen photos of Chris Lindsay there, and it looked packed.
He was Chris Lindsay was there dressed as, I think he was Mert.
Yeah.
And Martin Tideswell, who's like one of the main sort of UK guys, I think was the I can't remember his name, but I think he's called Mahidi. He's the Rakshasa in Descent into Avernus that's kind of masquerades as sort of merchant. And then I think Will was dressed as some kind of crow thing. So he had this like crow thing. And actually, the year before, when Will was there, Will was dressed as Volo, and it was like a boiling hot room, and he was like in this sort of Henry VIII outfit with this kind of big hat and stuff. Well, very, very hot. But yeah, so Chris Lindsay was over last year, and Alan Patrick was over. And during the Epic, we were all on these war machines, and I think I can't remember. I think my character fell off, and I got called over to another table that Alan Patrick was running. There was I think an ogre or a demon or something mounted on a nightmare with what appeared to be like a rocket launcher shooting at us. We had to get rid of him, and then I was allowed to go back to my table. So yeah, Wizards have been, I think, started kind of sponsoring it more over the last few years, the Adventures League stuff, and then last year they actually sent people over, and I think there was plans to do quite a lot of stuff this year, but of course it's been cancelled. So we have a virtual convention in August, and then we're back hopefully in Birmingham next June, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, they're trying to expand that European influence for sure. They got to take it back from Dark Eye.
Yes, yes.
Have you played Dark Eye?
No, I haven't.
I haven't either. I just heard that's the thing in Europe. That's like
is
equivalent
that in Germany or something, or
I think it might be originally from Germany, but so I've been told that like that has the presence over there the way D&D has a presence here.
Yeah, probably not in this country. I think here it's definitely D&D.
Warhammer
still very popular, and then the Warhammer and all of that is just really, really popular. Yeah, and I think people still love Cthulhu, and then a lot of the free league games like Symbaroum and Alien and things like that. People are Tales from the Loop and stuff like that. People are like those games. A lot of people I play with like those games.
Yeah, they're really taking off. Let's circle back to Empires of the Ghouls. What's that all about? I suspect there's ghouls.
Yes, there are. So this is like the first really big adventure path for the Midgard setting, which is like the Kobold Press house setting. This came out of Wolfgang's own D&D campaign. And it's an adventure path that takes you from level 1 up to level 13. It starts in the city of Zobek, which is a kind of it's like a Prague-like city with a kobold ghetto, kind of lots of clockwork and steam and stuff like that. You start exploring goings on amongst the kind of kobold community in Zobek. And before you know it, you're on your way on a kind of big road trip throughout the Midgard setting. So the second chapter, which I wrote, takes you into the Dwarven Mountains, and then into Krakovar, which is a country that has been 10 years ago was conquered by an army of ghouls and vampires, and is now under vampire occupation. So there's kind of a really fun sneaking through enemy territory aspect to it. Well, it's fun for the DM. It's quite tricky for the players, but yeah, they have to kind of get through enemy territory to track down an artifact that they're looking for, and then it takes you over the sea to the Northlands, where there's a wedding to stop, and I don't want to give too much away, but and then you travel a long way south into the kind of desert lands, some ghouls down there, and then the last two chapters are actually in the Underdark, in the underworld. So you are dealing them with you've been dealing with a lot of ghouls all the way through, but this is the ghoul empire that you are in. Ghouls in Midgard they've kind of replaced the Drow as the rulers of the Underdark. They are a civilization. They obviously eat people, but they are civilized. They have legions. They have dukes. They have an emperor, and you can talk to them if you're clever about what you say. And the last chapter involves making your way through a ghoul city. It kind of takes me back. When I was writing it, I was thinking about Vault of the Drow and how that involves you. You can't just go in there and start fighting everybody, because you're going to be dead straight away. You've got to be clever. You've got to try and find some allies. You've got to kind of stay under the radar, and that's what that adventure's all about. So yeah, 4 chapters around the world of Midgard, and then 2 chapters actually in the underworld, and dealing with all the various sort of races and politics, and trying to find people that can help you and not eat you.
I'm for anything that replaces the drill. I feel like they're a little played out after 20 years. We need other bad guys down there. I actually prefer Grey Dwarves and Dugar anyway. They have a cooler story.
The drow have been kind of conquered. There's some drow left, but they've been sort of shoved away. You know, there's a few drow sort of hanging out there, kind of trying to survive, but they've been sort of eliminated as a major force.
You kind of had me at Kobold Ghetto, but like I feel like the problem with some of my players would be they wouldn't want to leave that section.
Yeah, well, there's a really fun Kobold restaurant called the Rampant Roach, which you have to kind of go and help the owner, and I think it's his nephew, and there's a lot of fun there with all the sort of meals that he gives you as a reward for helping out, you know, sort of cockroach stew and things like that.
Sounds delicious.
It's really fun. Yeah, you get to meet a Kobold King, and so that chapter's really entertaining. Plus, you get your first sort of your first run-ins with the ghouls and the first sort of clues about what the overall big plot is about, which is fun.
Well, maybe if you eat enough kobold cuisine, you will be less appealing to the ghouls to munch on.
Yes, probably. You're probably right. Yeah.
You're talking about, you get to kind of go into their city and talk to them, and kind of navigate and negotiate. I'm thinking it's like, all right, boys, now no one look tasty. So
yeah, there's a bit of that, and by the time you get to that chapter, you've got some kind of clues and people that may or may not help you. But obviously, trying to get a ghoul noble to help you is not necessarily an easy task, and they may want you to do something that you don't particularly want to do. And there's quite a bit of that in both the last 2 chapters, having to do things that you don't particularly want to do to kind of achieve your goals. So yeah.
When you're playing in your own games, are you usually a player or the DM?
I'm usually the DM. I do play in a couple of games on a Monday night, but the main D&D game, I'm usually the DM. Yeah, so I'm running Empire of the Ghouls at the moment. So we only play once a month, and I started it I think last July, and we're sort of on chapter 2. So we're going we've been going quicker since we've been able to play more regularly during the pandemic. But we're kind of making our way through it slowly. But we're having a lot of fun doing it.
So
and I've been adding bits in as well. There was a Warlock Lair that came out from the Patreon that Kobold Press do, and it was set in Krakow, and it's obviously designed just to slot in. And I was like, oh right, I'm doing that, and so we added that in. That took a couple of sessions and took them off to this weird shadowy castle, and they had to sort of solve that, and they're now back on the main trek. But sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, does that mean most of your games are in Midgard?
No, this is the first one. This is the first Midgard game. So before this, I ran the first 5e campaign I ran was Tyranny of Dragons. So I bought that adventure at Gen Con in 2014, and I ran that. And again, because we play monthly, it takes longer, but I think we played about 35, 40 sessions once a month, about 3.5-4 hours a time. And I added lots of bits into that because I have a big library of old Forgotten Realms books. So I was kind of thinking, we could do some more stuff in Baldur's Gate here, and we can do some more stuff in Waterdeep here. And I don't like to rush things too much, I like to tinker around. I think published adventures are good when you tinker around with them a bit and add your own stuff in and add things that fit in with your characters. So I ran that, and then before that, the big campaign I ran was in Parsantium, which is a city setting that I wrote really for my own game and then published in 2014. So I ran 2 campaigns there. That was under 4th edition. But I used loads of Kobold Press adventures in those as well, because I was patron on Open Design. So I we used lots of Zobek stuff in Parsantium and just changed it.
Yeah, I mean that stuff is great for that. I mean when we do mostly homebrew as well, and we'll steal little bits and pieces and throw them in. The prepared supplement from Kobold Press is great as well.
Oh yeah.
If you just want an extra encounter, you don't know what you want to do. If you flip through there's some cool stuff.
Yeah. I use some from the Book of Lairs as well. That's very good.
So Dave wants to know, how did you get started with RPGs? Was it Warhammer or D&D or something else?
It was D&D, first edition, when I was at school, and Games Workshop did a cheap paperback version of the Player's Handbook, which was under £5 when I bought that. And I didn't have a DMG for ages, so I think I had combat tables from Judges Guild for original D&D on this sort of yellow cardboard combat tables. And we just sort of muddled along, really, for a while until I got a DMG. It all made a bit more sense then. But we played all of the sort of original Giant, Drow, Tomb of Horrors, all that kind of stuff. And then we got into Merc for a long time, Middle-earth role-playing, and Call of Cthulhu. And then I came back to D&D. I think when the Forgotten Realms came out, I came back to D&D and started running Forgotten Realms games. Through second edition, third edition, and fourth edition. But still play a lot of Cthulhu, and I play other games as well. But
So
long time, yeah.
Yeah, well, 1E, it's going back a ways. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth too. The second printing of first edition. I still remember, that was one of my favorite covers, and that was the wizard, was surrounded by little homunculuses.
Yeah, that's a brilliant cover. Yeah.
Also, those books were terribly made.
The Games Workshop ones were even worse because they're paperbacks, so they just completely fell to bits after you sort of thumb through them a bit.
Don't feel bad because
have them in binders, or they just kind of
Yeah, don't feel bad because the hardbacks also fell apart. So the bindings. The first printing of 5e was also terrible, and they were also falling out. So I was like, oh, they really are trying to give us that early edition feel.
Yeah, I have my 5th edition Player's Handbook. I got it signed by quite a few people at Gen Con, and then it fell to bits. And I wrote to them and I said, it's fallen to bits. What can I do? And they were very kindly sent me a brand new one from the States and didn't ask me to send the signed one back to them. So I still have the one that's fallen to bits, but it's signed by Jeremy Crawford and Rodney Thompson and all those people. So.
Yeah, their response to that was really good. It was like, at first it was send it back and they'll get you another one. And then I think really quickly it went to just send us a picture and we will. Honestly, I never sent for a replacement. I'm just so lazy. Like all I had to do was take a picture and send it to them and never bothered to. I do. Yeah. I look up everything digitally now anyway. I pretty much use D&D Beyond for everything.
D&D Beyond, yeah. I think it's very useful, isn't it? It's certainly while you're playing online, it's really useful to have it there, I think.
Yeah, and then I'm sure as a designer you find it super useful. I mean, we use it for any design work we do. We use it for research and videos and stuff. Just having the database there is a lot easier than flipping through, a handful of books.
Yeah, I think the tricky thing when you're writing for Kobold Press is that what you can't use. So you're kind of looking stuff up, and then you're like, right, okay, I want to use that. I have to now go back and check if it's in the SRD.
Yeah.
And if it's not in the SRD, then I better find something else.
Well, that's what I like. It makes it really easy because you can just filter all the basic rule stuff and be like, you see exactly what you can use.
Yes.
No, absolutely. So you said you played, Tyranny of Dragons for over 3 years.
That's right. Yeah,
that's not bad for $50. That's a lot of entertainment.
No, we got a lot of use out of it. We had a really good time with it. I think it does need a bit of extra work to go into it. I think to kind of it's worth putting a bit of extra work in because there are some areas where you go to Waterdeep and it's like covered in like half a page. And you can do a lot more with that if you've got some books or you want to do some stuff. But that's where all the kind of characters did all their own sort of side quests and all that kind of stuff, and that made it really fun, I think.
Yeah, I feel like up until Ravenloft, the adventures aren't as good. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they're not as good as from Ravenloft and on. And I believe it was Ravenloft is when Wizards of the Coast took over writing the adventures in-house. Everything else before that was outsourced. I think Tyranny of Dragons was Sasquatch Games, and then
No, it was Kobold Press, that one.
Oh, that one was Kobold Press.
And Steve went, yeah. But I think they were working from the playtest manuscripts and stuff. So
yes,
it made it a bit of a challenge because it was released at the same time as the Player's Handbook, which is before the Monster Manual was even out, I think.
Yeah, and I was going to say that because they brought in Kobold Press, Sasquatch Games, Green Ronin, some of these third-party publishers to write the adventures for them, but because they were still working on the actual books. Yeah. So I imagine it is more of a challenge, and not only that too, like those companies aren't going to be intimately familiar with the rules and maybe the pacing and the play style for that specific game because it was so new.
But I would say it's a very worthwhile campaign to run if you are willing to put in a bit of work. And there's a lot of really good blogs like from Sly Flourish and Merrick B and out there that were all out by the time I was running it, or at least while I was running it, because we were running it for such a long time.
Yeah.
And they were really helpful in terms of, this section, if you do this works really well, or you use this old Greenwood article here. That was all really helpful.
The DM's Guild has a lot of guides for a lot of the different adventures that you can find for people that are running them, and kind of if they want some ideas of how to spruce them up, or some of them are like to completely reorganize them so it flows a little better.
Yeah. I think when I was working on Empire of the Ghouls, I was kind of mindful of all the things that have frustrated me a bit when I was like trying to run a big campaign and everything. So I'm hoping that we kind of got all those things right in terms of like the chapters all joining up properly. The fact we had like 4 or 5 different people writing on it, the way that we kind of linked it all together, the way the outline that we gave the designers kind of said, this is your start point and this is where you need to hand off to the next person, and then Megan basically overseeing it all and making sure that it did all join up. And it helped that I wrote the second chapter, and by the time I'd finished writing and turned it over, that's when Jeff Lee and Kelly Paulick were writing 3 and 4. So they were able to see what I'd written, and then they could include some of the characters that I'd invented. Mm-hmm. And then when I came to do chapter 6, Mike Wellham sent me his chapter, and I was able to look at what he'd done and then say, okay, so that's what the boat they're on looks like, and they're going to meet this guy, okay, and Mike's come up with these people, so I need to put those people in. And that kind of collaboration between the kind of group of us helped make it all, I think, fit together as well as it could do, really.
How would you kind of like rate the experience or compare the experience from the first time you worked on Empire of Ghouls?
Oh God. Well, that was so different because I think we were, I hadn't really published anything then, and I didn't really understand the process. And I think a lot of it was like polls, and I was like, yes, we want more mushroom folk and stuff like that. I think I wrote some little suggestions on what the Emperor looked like. I don't know if those ended up in there or not. I think that was more of a collaborative thing. The storyline was very different because it was all really set in the Empire. You kind of go into the Empire like right at the beginning, and then you're finding your way around the underworld, running into all these places. But it was really cool when I was working on the new book to go back to that stuff and say, okay, so we need to go back here and here because those places are so cool, and this character needs to come back. And then I got to work on the chapter which was basically updating the whole setting. So the whole underworld, the Ghoul Imperium setting and all the places in it, I got to work on all of that. So some of them were like, I was like, we left them kind of pretty much how they were, and others it was like, right, those guys have been killed, these people are now here, or this area wasn't really explained, it was just a name, so what's here now, and writing all that stuff, which was really fun. And of course now the artwork and everything is like full color, and you know the original Empire of the Ghouls was a black and white, very basic book with stock art and some sort of black and white line art here and there, but mostly sort of I think there was people who were on the Patreon project did the maps for free. They kind of did some maps and sent them in. So it looked quite sort of rough and ready, and now everything's full color and beautiful artwork and beautifully edited, and a 350-page hardback book when it comes out in print form, when the printers are back and running again, but available now as a download.
So I would say at this point we've got about 12 to 15 inches of monster books, right?
Yes.
From Kobold Press.
Yeah.
How much work did you do, if any, on those?
I did 20. I think I did 24 monsters in a creature codex. So that was really fun. I did that between finishing work on the Midgard Worldbook, which I did quite a bit on that, and then starting on Empire of the Ghouls. And I think Wolfgang sent me this spreadsheet of it was just this enormous list of monsters, and it was like, these are all the monsters that are available, and it was kind of like a name, what sort of challenge rating they were, whether they were like a fiend or a fae or whatever, and then maybe a little one line about them. So I just got to pick from this spreadsheet which ones I wanted to do, and I think I did 12, and then I enjoyed doing those so much I said, I'll do another 12.
What was your favorite one or top pick?
I did a couple of vampires which were fun. I did a Cappy, which is like a sort of monkey person from India, like a Vanara basically. I did him. What else did I do? I did some Asian monsters because they were really fun, like Asian demons. I did a Kappa, the sort of guy with a tortoise shell on his back with a little bowl on his head with water in it. It's like a Japanese water spirit. I did a vulture lord. So I did loads of really out there things because I just thought they were fun. I did this guy called the Azaban, who's like I think from Native American myth, who's a raccoon fae, who is a kind of trickster character. So he's a good one to put into adventures where you want to just mess with your players and not necessarily get them into a fight, but just annoy them.
Mischief, get up to some mischief.
Yeah. I think Kobold Press has done a lot of really good fae in Tome of Beasts and Creature Codex, because there's not that many in the original monster manual. There's some more in Volos, but not that many in the original monster manual.
Not high CR. Yeah, the Fae Lords are really cool. Yeah. I went in on Tome of Beast and Creature Codex, but I think by the time I got to Tome of Beast 2, I was just like burnt out on monsters. I already had hundreds of monsters I was going to use.
But it's good if you've got a group that kind of, like my group, they kind of, particularly one of the players is a DM, and he reads a monster manual, and every time I bring out something from Tome of Beast or Creature Codex, he's like, what the hell's this? Yeah. Which is great, because he knows all the other ones off by heart, So it's nice to be able to surprise people.
I don't remember what it's called, but I think my favorite monster is the shark in the fishbowl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a shark. Giant shark ooze or something. Yeah, that's amazing.
It's just it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, that is really good. There's some really crazy ones in there actually. That is a particularly good one.
I feel like that's one of the ones that I can't use now because I think all my players are going to kind of know what that is because it's so ridiculous. It got shared all around the internet.
Yeah,
they're gonna know that the whole fishbowl is a monster as soon as I put it in there. But yeah, that one I just found it hilarious for whatever reason. But I think mostly, I probably still just use mostly the official stuff or make my own, right? Like I'm kind of big on, I'll have up like 2 or 3 stat blocks and I'll just make a new monster on the fly and just be like, I'll use this from this monster and that from that monster.
Yeah.
So like I spend all this money on all these products that I just never use.
But I think they give you inspiration, don't they? I think just
Yeah.
I've got way more than I'm ever going to use, or indeed read properly, But they give you inspiration looking at the art and reading bits and pieces here and there, and yeah.
We get like almost every pre-written adventure, and the kicker is we don't run pre-written adventures. It's like Storm King's Thunder. I paid $50 for that book or whatever it was on Amazon, and I've used like a paragraph out of it. For the pixie dust when I gave it to the pixie dust to my players in a game as a reward, and then I even tweaked it so it wasn't even exactly the same from the book, but I guess part of this hobby is being a collector too.
Yeah, they're nice books to have, aren't they, and to collect, and definitely you can strip like adventures down. There's big wizard adventures and the Empire of the Ghouls and things like that. You can just use the dungeons here and there. You can use the maps, and that's all really good, isn't it? I think
we need wizards. We need Wizards of the Coast to let third-party publishers into D&D Beyond. Then it'll be so much easier, and that stuff will get so much more use. For me, anyway.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot. Yeah. It's a complicated licensing thing, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, it is. Like, my understanding is Kobold Press would let everything, or not Kobold Press, though, but D&D Beyond would let everybody in, but they cannot. So... Yeah. It's very finicky, to say the least. Yeah. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But they're doing their own game. They got the rights to the Cortex System, so they're gonna have like a full digital suite for the Cortex System, and in there they'll be able to do whatever they want. So if other companies make stuff, I imagine we'll see it over there. I think they're going to do some kind of open gaming license.
Right.
So I'm intrigued to see what that does.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting.
So, speaking of other RPGs, are you playing any non-D&D games currently?
Yeah, so we play Trail of Cthulhu every month as well. So we finished Master Nyarlathotep a few months ago, which we've been playing that for about 2 or 3 years. I think I was on my second character. The first one had his eyes torn out by a sorcerer, which was a bit unfortunate, and he had to retire. But we did get to the end, and we did all more or less survive, I think. Some people even had the same character they started with. So that was a lot of fun, because I hadn't played that back in the day. I ran Horror of the Orient Express, which was brilliant, but I hadn't ever played Masks, and I thought it was fantastic. And I think we're going to do that. There's a Berlin between the wars Berlin Cthulhu scenario or setting book that Chaosium have done, and I think our keeper's going to convert that to Trail of Cthulhu, and we're going to play that when the pandemic's over. At the moment we're playing online. We're playing some trail scenarios set in New York, Arkham. I think they're called Arkham Detective Stories, which are very good. But yeah, I like Gumshoe. It's a good break from D&D, and I like it took a while to get used to the spending points and not rolling and things like that. But once you've got used to it, then you kind of get into it. And it's nice to know that you'll always find the clues. You might not be able to work out what the hell they mean, but you will always find the clues.
Yeah.
You're not going to get stuck because you haven't got the information. You're going to get stuck because you're stupid and haven't figured it out. But fortunately, we usually do figure it out, and we can usually get on with the plot.
Yeah, I was just talking to a buddy about, he just started running games, and he was fishing for some advice, and I was just like, never ever let anything depend on a die roll if you think it's important for it to happen in your game. Yeah. It's something to really watch out for when you're an adventure writer as well. And there are a few things in Empire of the Ghouls and in the stuff I did for Adventures League where the players need to get some information, and then you have to just give it to them, and then there might be consequences for them not making a die roll. They still get the information, but something bad happens also, but not that they get stuck with not getting the information because the scenario grinds to a halt and everyone gets frustrated. Yeah, well, no one more than the GM, because the adventure is basically stopped, and you're like, where do you go from now? here, because the players may not actually know what's going on anyway. So for them, they just missed the role. May not even realize the importance of it. So yeah, I mean I think that's like good advice. And if you want to attach a role to something important to the game, then it's better to attach consequences and not whether or not they get what they're looking for.
I don't know if you've seen those. I don't know if you've played in Numenera, but Monty Cook has these instant adventures things, and they're kind of like very short adventures in terms of page count, like 4 to 6 pages, and then you can play them in a single session with not much prep. But in those, there are he uses this concept of keys, which are these sort of useful bits of information or things you need to solve the scenario, and the DM can move the keys around where they don't have to be found in like this room. So if they miss it in that room, you can stick the key in another room. It's quite clever mechanic, and it just makes sure that if you're running out of time, for example, you can put the key in the area where they're going and make sure they get the right bits. It's quite a clever way of doing it.
It makes sense. I mean, Monty Cook has been making games for a long time, and playing games for a long time. So he's seen all the problems, and coming up. Yeah, his games always seem to like try and solve a problem. Like when he comes up like the Invisible Sun system. Like the first thing I was like, oh, this is really cool. The idea that the way the game is designed, it's literally designed for your players that don't show up to every session to not be there.
Yeah.
So anytime you can do that. I've not played Numenera yet. I've played some Cypher System, which is based off of that. But I have not played in the that setting yet. Which
it's great. It's good fun.
Yeah, it looks like a great setting. I'm very intrigued by that.
It's really good for one-shots as well, I think. So I played it first at a convention, and then I bought the game and I've run a few one-shots with it, and it lends itself definitely to that. You usually got like a kind of weird situation to explore.
Yeah.
Short sessions, usually pretty good for it.
Yeah, Gamehole Con, I played some Cypher System, and I kind of threw the GM off because I wanted to do something different. I was like, hey, I want to be a caster, but I want to use my might stat instead. I want to be a blood sorcerer. And they shut me down, but I'm like, all right, well, I'll just describe everything as being a blood sorcerer and use my mental stat instead.
Yeah.
But one of the things I do like about that game is really, it's very flexible and generic, so you can do whatever.
Yeah. That's good.
I also want to...
Have you played Invisible Sun?
What's that? I have not played Invisible Sun. We backed the Kickstarter and got 3 of them.
Wow.
And gave 2 of them away, and we still have the cube sitting on a shelf.
I played it once. I played one session at Dragonmeet, and I really enjoyed it. But I have the PDF of it, but I don't quite know where to start reading it. I need to start having a look through it. But I didn't buy it because I thought, although it's lovely, I think it would just sit on the shelf.
Yeah,
I wouldn't get a chance to fit it in. It looks amazing though.
Yeah, oh yeah, we definitely did that and opened it up and shot a video doing that, and that was a lot of fun, and we gave a couple of them away. It's the hard part is always like introducing a new system. I think now when I was a kid, right, we would like start a new system every week, it felt like, and play like one session or make characters and then never touch it again. But now, it's so hard to move away from the games that we're comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah.
Just because the time investment in learning a new game. It's like we're kind of like, well, if we can find someone to run this to us and we can learn it as we play.
That's what's so good about conventions, isn't it? Because if you go to a convention, you can sign. Oh, I always try and sign up for something I've never played before, and that's how I ended up playing Timberoom and one of the other free league games, Coriolis, which is a great game, because I just thought, I'd like to play that. This is going to be the only chance I'm going to get to play it, so I'll play at this convention.
And and it's a great way to do it and get into new games, because it's just like, hand me a pre-gen character, and And we can figure it out as we go. Whoever's running the game can tell me what dice to roll. I'll tell them what I want to try and do, and we'll see how it works out. And also one shots too. It's like you're not vested in the characters, so I don't really care what happens to them.
Yeah. You don't mind if you'll get blown up at the end.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't happen too soon, so you get to play for a little while.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although also I feel like at a convention, right, is a good place. Even if you do die early, and you can't get back into the game, you can just wander off.
Yes.
So that part's not so bad either. So going back to kind of design, what are your favorite parts of design for games?
I think I like setting stuff, really. That's my favorite thing to write on. So I wrote my own city source book, and I wrote quite a bit of the Midgard Worldbook. So just being able to write about a place, and then populating that place with like interesting characters and like lots and lots of adventure hooks. Wolfgang talks about stacking up barrels of gunpowder in Midgard, and I think that's a really good design philosophy that you put stuff into. If you're writing any kind of setting thing, you put stuff in there that if the characters mess around with it, there could well be an explosion. You sort of put that potential for something exciting or interesting to happen in there, and I really like doing that. And I just like writing about different places and doing that kind of world building side of it, and kind of then being able to share that with other people and get paid a bit for it as well. It's nice.
Getting paid for it is nice as well.
Yes, yeah, that's a good thing.
I had someone ask me what my favorite part of what we do is. I'm like, getting paid, because I was going to do this stuff regardless. I'm going to talk about gaming and D&D. I'm going to play games, so that stuff is happening no matter what. The getting paid part, not so much. So getting paid to do the thing that you really enjoy doing is amazing.
Yeah,
super lucky that way. So for Midgard, do you have a favorite piece that you've created?
Oh God. Well, I'm very fond of all the stuff for Empire of the Ghouls. Very fond of the Ghoul Underworld. I very much like the Blood Kingdom, which is the whole area ruled by the vampires and ghouls. And I didn't create the kind of core part of that, but I basically I was the person who invaded Krakow and put it under vampire occupation in the world book. So I'm kind of got a very soft spot for that. And then bits of the Southlands I really like as well. I've done some stuff for Southlands for the world book, and I did some Warlock Lairs set in the Southlands, so I really like those. I was always really a big fan of Al-Qadim and stuff like that, so that kind of North African sort of Egyptian sort of settings, Desert of Desolation, all that kind of stuff. I really like all that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, did you get to collab on any of that stuff with Dan Dillon? Because I know they are also some of his favorites.
Yeah, a little bit. I was when I was doing the Southlands chapter for the World Book, I remember asking Dan, because he'd written an adventure, and I was like, I need to know where to put this. I want to put this adventure like where it takes place on the map. Tell me where you think it should be. But I haven't collaborated that much with him, but we do chat about stuff like that. Yeah.
So so that's for Midgard. But what about your own setting? Where's your what is the favorite thing you created from there that you're like glad went into?
So the whole city really. So the concept of Parsantium is it is a kind of big crossroads melting pot. So the starting point was Byzantium or Istanbul, which I'd been to a couple of times and thought was an amazing place. And I kind of took the sort of Greco-Roman influences of Byzantium, and then put in elements from the Arabian Nights and from India and from the Far East. So all of these kind of communities all converge on this big trading city, which has a big sort of waterway through the middle, and you've got a northern side, which is where the kind of Batiorans, who are the Greek, the Bethurians, the Greek and Roman kind of imperial people are, and then the kind of old quarter, which was founded by the Sampurans and then conquered by the Akranis. They're on the other side, so you've got this divide between the sort of old and the new quarters. You've got different architecture in both places. You've got loads of cults and things operating underneath the city. There are sort of serpent folk infiltrating everything, lots of demonic cults, and a lot of Rakshasas. There are quite a few Rakshasas in the setting, up to no good, and manipulating things behind the scenes. And the big sort of villain of the whole campaign is a Rakshasa Raja who once ruled the city many thousands of years ago, who is encased in ice in a mountain to the south, and lots of plotting going on by sort of yak folk and Rakshasas about how they can free this guy so he can reclaim this rightful place as the ruler of the city and the world. Siri's now talking to me.
Yeah. Ooh, yak folk as villains. That sounds fun.
Yeah, I really like yak folk. Yeah. So yeah, Rakshasas and yak folk are kind of in cahoots in the setting. But there's lots of kind of it starts very much in the sort of early adventures. We started very much in the kind of down in the streets, in the slums, or in a boat town and stuff like that, and then the characters get mixed up much more with the politics and so on. It was a lot of fun.
Pardon me. So Brian Smith has a question, and it'll probably be the last one before we head on out. What item loot have you designed, given out, that is always a hit?
What item of loot?
Yeah, item or loot that you've given out, that you designed or given out, and it's always a hit.
It's always a hit. Oh God. People just like swords, don't they? I think characters just, I put all these I find all these interesting items in, the DMG or in other books, kind of quirky, interesting items, and players going, and you say, oh, here's a +1 sword, and they're like, brilliant. They want magic swords, they want magic armor, they want wands that make them hit better. That's always a hit. So trying to put items in that they actually want is my advice. And then they tolerate me putting in quirky cloaks that do weird things. So they go, yeah, I could turn into a tree if I own this box. Right, okay, maybe that'll come in handy one day.
Yeah. I think that makes me think of a meme.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to head on out. A bit out of time, but I want to thank you for stopping by, Richard. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And everyone else, as always, there is a pinned comment down below. You can find Richard on the web. Go follow him and check out his stuff. And until next time, stay nerdy.